This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney. This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy. Previously on the podcast, we've been discussing the key elements of your innovation mix. The three that I've been discussing: 1, organic, which is your internal R&D; 2, innovations from mergers and acquisitions, what some of you may be calling corporate venturing; and 3, co-innovation. This week's podcast, I'm just going to talk about co-innovation. Now, what is co-innovation? Some of you may be thinking in the back of your minds terms like joint R&D, maybe joint venture, customer-driven innovation. In my case, I'm thinking about it completely differently. Co-innovation is different from all of these. I define it as really being two parties with unique IP, patents, expertise, etc., that come together in a 50-50 funding of resources. That could be dollars, people, facilities, factories, whatever it might be. Key components are they have complementary interests. So what do I mean by this? Think of it in the context of your own interests. You define that as a group of areas that you're keenly interested in with your business. This potential co-innovation partner has their interests. And think of it as a Venn diagram. The objective in a co-innovation is to find where the Venn diagrams overlap. And that's where the area of co-innovation is. If you try to do it outside of the Venn, meaning maybe it's a customer who has a keen area of interest, they're waving some money at you, and you actually go out of your areas of interest and go to your customers' areas of interest, and that's what you do from the innovation perspective. That's not co-innovation. That's contract R&D. Now, you may want to do that. That's great. But call it what it is. That is contract R&D. Co-innovation means it's truly a 50-50. You find that common area of interest. Think of it in the form of a Venn diagram. Out of that, you agree on what the target is, who's going to be the ultimate customer or market for this innovation, what is it, and how do you go about doing it. The other key component to really be a successful or really to qualify as a co-innovation is that neither of you can do it alone. So it's not a situation where you've got this great idea and you go out and you get people to show interest and give you 50% of the money, and they're basically funding you to do 100% of that work. Again, that's contract R&D. In this case, it's something that you want to go do, something your partner wants to go do, and neither one of you can go it alone. This creates mutual dependency. And this creates a unique culture around this innovation program. It's not just some one side's idea and the other trying to convince the other one to give them half the money to get it done. This is something that requires both entities to participate in. And the last and most important criteria for my categorization of what I mean by co-innovation is that you're going to launch a real product. Not do some research, not write some papers, not do just some PowerPoints. You're going to launch a real product. And in my case, in my teams, that real product had to be on the shelf within 24 months. And that real product, whatever it is, it could be a product, a service, something, had to have high impact to both organizations. Not just my team, not just the other person's team, but the end resulting product had to have high impact to both organizations. So again, two parties with unique IP, patents, expertise, 50-50 contribution. That could be in dollars, people, facilities, factories, supply chain, whatever. It needs to have structured around complementary interests. Using this Venn diagram analogy, you define the sphere of your interest, the partner defines their sphere of interest and things that they're working on, and you're looking for where that overlap is, where it's high interest for both parties. Agree on what the target is. Who's the target? meaning who's the customer, what is it you're going to go do, and how you're going to go about doing it. The understanding that neither of you can do it alone. Create the mutual dependency for the success of this innovation program. Mutual dependency prevents any one party from being able just to randomly walk away midstream. You need the mutual dependency. And then last, you have to commit to launching something real. Innovation is about delivering something real, not just sitting around and thinking about it and doing whiteboards and publishing PowerPoint slides and publishing articles, etc. Launch real products. In the case of my team, that timeline was 24 months from the time we signed a co-innovation agreement until product was put on the shelf. Now, if you set up co-innovation programs successfully, they have huge benefits to your organization. One, it reduces the risk. You're not going it alone. Two, it actually speeds up the delivery of innovation. In many cases, people think, oh, if I do it organically inside my organization, that's actually the fastest way to put innovations on the shelf. It's actually not. What I have found is with co-innovation, you can actually speed up the process of delivering those innovations to the marketplace. Why is that? Because you have this mutual dependency. You have two organizations pushing for you, and you have a committed timeline. For some reason, it's actually easier for innovation teams to disappoint internal managers than it is to disappoint external managers. Managers that are outside their organization that they've made commitments to. And by having this be really this codependency across both organizations, what I have found is both teams don't want to disappoint the other person's management teams. And this process actually drives a tighter bond and a more focused execution. The other is it just leverages your R&D budget. If you truly focus on a 50-50 funding model, then for every dollar that you put into your R&D, you're getting $1 of contribution from the other partner. Both of you then get leveraged R&D benefits from those efforts to go into areas. And in today's days and markets, leveraging your R&D dollars is becoming critically important. Now, over the years that I've put together these co-innovation programs, there's a couple of lessons learned that I've come across, particularly around governance. How do you manage these co-innovation programs once they get underway? The one trick that I use, and I would encourage everybody to use this, is use your senior executive sponsorship to set the pacing. Whenever I've defined a co-innovation agreement, I've taken the most senior executive within my organization and the most senior executive in the corresponding organization. Typically, the two CEOs own and will sponsor these co-innovation programs. Once I've identified who that sponsor is, then I use them to set the pacing. In many cases, we set up face-to-face meetings every 60 days to review the co-innovation program. Why? It really didn't require these executives to get together that frequently, but when everybody in the team knows that the two CEOs are going to be getting together, next Friday, guess what happens? Everybody steps up and starts really making sure that they're making progress and they can show progress in this meeting. They don't want their CEO to look bad in front of the other CEO. And so I artificially kept a very quick pacing between these CEOs in order to drive both organizations to stay on track and deliver ultimately on these co-innovation programs. And so therefore it literally pushes the team by using your senior executives as that pacing mechanism. Second, with regards to governance, is set gates and milestones. Set your gates, define what has to be delivered against to clear that next gate, time that gate to be when the CEOs meet, so they all agree, we're going into prototype phase, so what's the plan, did we finish the market analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And by that, then the team knows what the targets are. The key when you're working with two teams, your organization and somebody else's organization, is you have to have clear targets. If you don't have clear targets and they're constantly moving, people become very frustrated. They're frustrated enough within their own organization. You have to really take this to another level when you're dealing with a co-innovation program. You've got to get this very crisp, otherwise the frustrations just permeate. And then the other is share and show what you're working on. Take the early work that you've done, prototypes, etc., and put it out in real life. Go into the field, get real feedback, observe real customers using your real products. This is critical because if you stay inside the trenches too long, you become disconnected and the markets and needs can change. But more importantly, what I have found is when you get out there and you put it in real world life, the senior executives who are sponsoring it actually get more excited about it and become even stronger advocates for the innovation programs. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. So this could involve, going to a partner's facility or a partner event, your co-innovation partner, go to one of their events, set it up, show it to them, show it to their employees, show it to their customers. Likewise, do it at one of your customer events, maybe an advisory board meeting. But get out there and show it. And show the fact that it's the two organizations coming together to drive this innovation. And from that standpoint, you actually will drive much broader support within both organizations. And you get a little bit of a pride effect going from people saying, wow, look at the work that we're doing with Acme Corporation over here. And the two of us are really going after this space. And it actually helps reinforce to the employees in both organizations that the target area, meaning the product you're going to deliver and the customer you're going after, obviously must be a key area since both companies have agreed that that is an important area. Now, how do you get one of these co-innovation projects going? They don't start overnight, right? So one is you have to find the areas of mutual interest. This takes time. It takes lots of conversations. In my case, I would spend upwards of 3 to 6 months having regular conversations with the leaders of another organization. They would be sharing what their R&D plans are, what their innovation pipeline looks like, what the challenges they're facing in their business. Likewise, I would share what the challenges in our organization and what the pipeline looked like and what the R&D roadmap looked like. And out of that conversation, we would come together and find some nuggets of areas of mutual interest. Then I and a senior executive from the other company, we would actually set up a one-day session, a one-day workshop, where teams from both sides would stand up and talk about their areas of interest. Here are some things that we are keenly focused in where we think big opportunities are. Likewise, our team would do that. In this workshop, we would find the Venn overlap. We would do a Venn diagram. We would find the overlap of mutual interest. And then we would literally start to assemble the teams on the spot. Okay, you 3 people, you focus on this. You 3 people focus on that. And start working together as teams. Over the next 30 days, these teams would actually come back to the 2 senior executive sponsors and propose a target. Propose a program to target a very specific product, service, solution, experience to a very specific customer base. If then the governance model, meaning the 2 senior executives have a conversation, align, they approve the targets, and we're off to the races. Now, what I have found is once you've gone through this process once with your partner, subsequent projects go much, much faster. But you have to plan on the fact that you're going to be upwards of 6, 9 months to a year. I had one co-innovation program that literally took from the first conversation until we signed the first co-innovation project 3 years to get started because there were a lot of other issues. Finding that mutual dependency, finding the area of focus, making sure we had all of the elements of a great co-innovation project. I've just learned over the years that if you try to skimp on that, meaning, we'll call it co-innovation, but we really don't have anything mutual dependent. I could do it on my own, but this just happens to be a key customer, so I want to make them feel good like they're, quote, innovating with us. Those projects inherently fail. You have to have that discipline. Now, I took a lot of abuse holding off this key partner for 3 years until we can get a properly structured co-innovation program. But once we did it, man, we just cranked out these programs and had phenomenal success with the products that resulted from those efforts. So you have to have the discipline. But again, once you've gone through this process of one, having that kind of ongoing conversation with the senior leaders of your potential partner, and then doing this kind of one-day workshop and finding where your areas of focus are, putting together the teams, and putting together your governance model. Once you've gone through that once, it does go much faster. You just need to be honest with yourself about how long it takes up front to get those going. Now, when it's not done right, these things will blow up in your face. The problem in many cases is people want to call things co-innovation when they're really not. For instance, contract R&D. A lot of companies, particularly in the tech sector, particularly in programs that where the quote innovator is a much smaller company with much larger clients, it becomes contract R&D. They go to the customer says, hey, I really need work or help in this area, and I'm willing to pay you for it, right? And they call it co-innovation, but it's really contract R&D. And that's fine. For a lot of companies, that's a business model that works, right? But that's not co-innovation. That is contract R&D. The other that I run across a lot is people are really focused on the R, the research side, with no plan for the D. Lots of organizations have their equivalent of a labs, right? So a bunch of researchers who are just focused on the R side of the R&D programs, right? So in this case, their focus is on R, right? Remember, I'm calling this co-innovation. Innovation is all about the execution. Ideas without execution are a hobby. To turn something into an innovation, it requires execution. If you're focusing on just the R, it's not innovation. Just call it. It's joint research, right? We're going to do a joint research program with this company. It's not about innovation. The third area, and this is probably my most frustrating area, is that it turns into a PR or marketing effort, right? So some senior executives run around and they cut a deal and they're primarily focused on the press release saying, Acme Corporation and ABC Corporation are going to get together and they're going to do this some magic thing, and we're going to jointly develop programs and technologies into this space. It's all about the press release. There's no commitment to really deliver. There's really been no thinking. There's been no time from the standpoint of really understanding the areas of focus. There's no mutual dependency for success, right? So it's a PR marketing effort. In these cases, people have gone out. In fact, the marketplace has become very calloused to these types of programs, right? So you go out there and you talk about it, and then nothing ever happens, right? People go, but just another one of those things, right? And you can go out, do a Google search. You can look for co-innovation programs and announcements that have been made, and then go back and try to find the actual results or impacts. In my case is, if you follow these basic rules, right? Two parties, 50-50 commitment, complementary interests, think of that Venn diagram, an agreed upon target, who, what, and how. Create the mutual dependency. Find innovation programs where you have this mutual dependency, and then launch a real product. Whether, in my case, it was 24 months, it could be 36 months, whatever. But if you get that right, you get that mutual area of focus, the 50-50 resourcing, that codependency, and delivering real innovations, co-innovation programs can really ignite your organization and take you into market opportunities that you would never be able to achieve on your own, and therefore drive success for the overall organization. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. I'm Phil McKinney. I wanted to let you know that we are taking a few weeks away from the studio to work on a whole new batch of shows. In the meantime, we are reaching back into the 14-year archive and bringing you some of our most popular shows from the past. Enjoy. Why is it so hard for people to pitch their ideas? To tell the story of their ideas in such a way that people just swarm them and they want to be part of it. They want to invest in it. But so few entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs being both startups, entrepreneurs inside of corporations needing to get their managers' approval, innovation teams trying to convince executives or outside investors to invest. The skill of the pitch is so hard to find. In fact, I can't tell you how many pitches I've had to sit through over my years, both at HP and now as a consultant outside of HP, where those pitches are just absolutely painful. I mean, painful to listen to. What I've found is that the types of pitches typically fall into two common buckets or categories. One is the person who's making the pitch believes that they can win you with facts. They know every obscure detail about the subject matter they're talking about. They clearly believe that they are the smartest person in the room. And if you disagree or want to challenge them on it, they take a belittling approach to the people in the room by trying to swarm them with the facts to prove that they are the smartest person in the room. The other is overwhelming with content. These are the people who make the pitches, come in with thick notebooks, 100-page PowerPoints, and they're going to grind you through all 100 PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure why. My guess is that they're hoping that you'll just yell uncle and give in and agree with them just to avoid needing to get through the last of the slides. I've even been in pitches where someone has agreed to go forward at slide 30, and the person still made everybody sit there and go through the other 70 slides to complete the pitch. So why is it so hard? Why is it that people just struggle with putting together a well-thought-out, well-structured pitch to convey your idea? The problem is that many people forget about the fact that decisions are personal. We may think decisions are made factually. You may think you're part of some large organization, and therefore the decision-making process is very structured. You cannot ignore that personal, emotional side to the decision-making process. We're all driven by our pasts, what's worked for us, our gut, the way we were raised, the school we went to, the people we hang out with, the current issues going on in our personal lives, all have an impact into the decision-making process. And so in doing the pitch, you have to create an emotional side of your story, not just the factual side, but you have to create an emotional side to your story to hook the listeners in for them to truly understand what your idea is about and why they should support it. The way I do this is a concept called strategic storytelling. Storytelling is critical in telling the pitch. Storytelling is about not sitting there and grinding through the facts and just giving them market share numbers and growth and, boring people to death with PowerPoint slides. Storytelling around a strategic pitch conveys three things. One is you define the problem in the form of a story. 2, you define the solution as part of a story. And 3, you place the people in that story, the person you're talking to, the persons that are in the room. The story that you tell is such a way that they can either place themselves in that story, meaning that's a problem that they personally have, or it's a problem that their family's experienced, a spouse, a child, a grandparent, or if it's a business story, they could see their own business in it, or they could see a friend's business experiencing that problem. Likewise, when you tell the story part of the solution, they can see them using that solution to solve that problem. It's that emotional hook, their ability to see themselves living in the problem space that you're defining and using the solution that you're proposing. Now, the way to structure this strategic storytelling is using the basic structure of a 3-act play. 3-act play is structured. This is what you typically see in movies. It's what you see on TV shows. The first act is really the setup. Act 1 is about setting up the location, defining the characters. In the case of characters, it could be individuals, it could be businesses, it could be governments. You have to lay the foundation. You start the storytelling by going through this process of the setup, giving people enough background and warming them up to understand that you're going into a storytelling process, and you tell it in such rich context that they actually start engaging in the storytelling. They can see themselves in it from the standpoint of participating in that story. Act 2, that's the confrontation. It's really the obstacle, the problem, the challenge that people are facing. In this Act 2, you describe the size, the scope, the impact of the problem. How big is the problem? You're using this act to really pull out the emotions. People get engaged from the standpoint of understanding how big and how impactful that markets are going to go away, or the environment is going to be destroyed, or competitors are going to blow past us in the marketplace. That second act is really defining that emotional. You're building up to a peak. You're building up to the climax. Act 3 is the resolution. You build up to that climax, to the problem, and you save the day with your solution. Solution comes in. You describe how the solution at some point in the future is going to solve these problems and take the problems away, or at least minimize those problems. What's more important in the resolution also is the ongoing role of the solution. It's not just about we solve the problem and you're done. It's about telling what's the role of the solution on a long-term basis. Where does this play out in a longer kind of a range of the future? Now, to kind of give you an idea of the balance between the three acts, if you think about it in the context of a movie, a typical 2-hour movie breaks down to be about 30 minutes in Act 1 in the setup phase. The confrontation, Act 2, is about an hour. And then the resolution, the ending, the climax, the solving of the problem, the wrapping up of the story is about 30 minutes. So again, you can think of it as about 25% in Act 1, 50% in Act 2, 25% in Act 3. Now, if you spend the time and really think about that kind of a structure, and you put it to not only to your presentations, but just talk. Don't use slides. Don't use lots of slides if you feel like you have to have some slides. Talk, engage, watch the process of telling the story and the impact. Now, what I have found over the years in my experience in creating these strategic storytelling processes is there are some basic rules. One is keep it short. Don't drone on for an hour. Typically about 20 minutes is a good time length for the story. Now, I'm a big believer in the Guy Kawasaki rule for presentations anyways, right? So 10, 20, 30. 10 slides, 20 minutes, nothing less than a 30-point font. Same applies here. Keep it short. If you've got a 1-hour meeting, don't plan on presenting for an hour. Don't make a pitch for an hour. Pitch for 20 minutes. If it takes you longer than 20 minutes to explain what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and the benefits and all of that, then you don't know your subject matter well enough. 2, tailor it to the people in the meeting. Don't go in there with a generic story. With access to all the information you can get on people through LinkedIn and online searches or whatever, you can find out a lot about the people who are going to be in the room. Tailor the story. Understand what they are going through. If you don't, understand what they might be going through. Understand a little bit of the context of what the challenges are in their industry. Tailor the story. 3, put emotion and passion into it. Don't make it sound like you're reading a script off of a piece of paper and you're saying it in a monotone voice. Put emotion and passion into it. Practice it. Make it such that it comes off as being a natural process of just telling what's, the setting the background. And you can do this in the context of what was it that caused you to even look at this problem space. Give the context of how you identified the problem even existed and tell it in such a way. Make it interesting. Don't make it some boring, you're going to, just read it off of a piece of paper. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. The fourth is understand the use of pausing and the tone of your voice to create tension and excitement. Just as I said, putting emotion and passion into it, understand the role of your voice in storytelling. Understand the role of your voice in being able to use a strategic pause, which creates tension in the room, and also the raising, lowering, loudness, softness of your voice to create tension. The next time you watch a movie, listen to the music background. When is the music loud? When is the music soft? When does the beat of the music speed up? When does the beat of the music slow down? You need to convey that in the tone of your voice when you're making the pitch. These are basically good storytelling practices in the use of pause and tone. So I'd actually encourage you to go out. There's some great books out there, some great videos on YouTube of people who are just phenomenal storytellers, and listen to them. Understand what it is, what's the trick that they're using. And I wouldn't say trick, but how is it they convey the story in such a way that you're right in there with them. The other rule that I've learned over the years is read the body language. If people are dozing off or rechecking their BlackBerries and they're not really listening to you, change it up. Put something in there that's going to get them engaged. Make eye contact. Move around the room. Don't sit in a chair. Don't stand in the front gripping, a clicker, flipping your PowerPoint slides. Walk around the room. Read the body language. Engage with the people who are responding with you, and others will engage also. The other rule is when you end your strategic story, end it with emphasis. End it in such a way that when you are done with your story and you stop talking, just end it on a pause. What you want is you want to let it sink into people's minds, but what you really want them to say is wow, I get it. I really understand what it is you're trying to do, and I want to be part of it. I either want to invest or I want to join your team, but you want to end it on emphasis. End it in such a way that you end and let a pause happen at the end and let it sink into people's minds. The reaction you're going for is that wow reaction. Now, in a future podcast, I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail on this to give you some specifics. And in fact, if I have enough time, I'll actually sit down and go through and create a fake or a mock strategic storytelling around some fake idea or something, just to help convey to you what it is that I'm trying to convey here. You can never practice your pitch enough times. If you're out there doing pitches, have the guts to follow up with everybody in the room and ask them the simple question of, how can I improve my pitch? How can I improve conveying to people what it is we're trying to do? Were there things that were confusing? Were there things that were unclear? And when people say, oh, no, you were great, push back. People tend to want to be nice, but what you need in the process of creating your pitches, whether that's an internal pitch or an external pitch, is honest, unvarnished feedback. You don't improve unless you hear the honest truth. So if everybody says, oh, no, you did a great job, great pitch, great story, push back. You want that honest feedback. That's how you improve. So if you're out there doing pitches, follow up. 2, practice. Get out there and just practice. Record it. Listen back. Videotape yourself. Listen back. Go onto YouTube. Find great storytellers and see how they tell their stories. And then figure out ways that you can craft your story to have that same level of emotional feedback. As I said at the start of this podcast, you cannot ignore that emotional side of the decision-making process. We tend to want to think about decisions as being purely factual. It's not the case. The emotional side plays a role in all decision-making. And storytelling is a way for you to tap into that emotional side, engage the listener, place them in the story, convey to them what it is about your idea that's valuable, explain to them the problem you're solving, explain how you solve the problem, and then close it with their emotions from the standpoint of getting them to commit to be part of your journey. If you can do that, you will be wildly successful. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Beyond this show, I write about my personal experiences of being in the innovation game for the last 2 decades. Topics include innovation, creativity, culture, team building, metrics, frustrations, leadership, and how to win. You can find that content over at philmckinney.com. You can also find out information about my book, Beyond the Obvious, including extensive excerpts over at beyondtheobvious.com. You can find hardcover, digital, and audio versions of my book on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. Now, the reason I started this show back in 2005 was to pay back my early mentor. My first mentor, Bob Davis, invested an immense amount of time in training and coaching me, which had a major impact on my career. When I went back and asked him how I could pay him back, he laughed and said I couldn't. I had to pay it forward. If I could ask for a favor, could you help me pay it forward? How? 1, by giving us a rating wherever you get your podcast, as that helps spread the word. And 2, by telling others about the show. If you want to be part of the conversation between the shows, I hang out in the Innovators community on Slack. The Innovators community is a private community of vetted innovators who help each other succeed. Check it out at theinnovators.community. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog going back to 2005 at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week, and in the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.